This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, an online learning community. Have you ever worried whether you were doing your job right? At the Institute, we turn researchers into fundraising intelligence assets, leading your development officers to the biggest and best donor prospects, and bringing your organization major gift success.
Our major gifts colleagues always are more successful when they feel comfortable asking questions or seeking help, when they know what they need to do to get started, and when all the tools are in place.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Janna Lee, Senior Director of Development Operations at the National Parks Conservation Association. Hello, Janna. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Great to be here, Jen. Thanks for having me.
So before we dive into your prospect management success story, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share how you came to the field of research and prospect management, and then a little bit about what you're doing right now.
Sure. Like just about everybody else, I stumbled into this career accidentally. My first job was as an entry-level development assistant. I figured I can do administrative work and it'll pay the bills while I figure out what I want to do with my life. I had a really great first supervisor, though, who let me try a little bit of everything in development. I wrote some grant reports. I staffed events and board meetings. I shadowed major gift officers on their visits, and I did research and data work. And those last areas really wound up being my sweet spot. I moved into roles solely focused on prospect management for a while. Then I added on more research and data projects. And for the last few years, I've been managing advancement services or development operations teams. So I've hopped back and forth between environmental groups and large academic medical centers, but right now I'm at the National Parks Conservation Association. And in my role right now as the Senior Director of DevOps, I manage our budget, our database projects, gift processing, and prospect research, while I still do a lot of the day-to-day prospect management work myself.
That's an amazing role because a lot of people get into management and then they're like, I miss doing things. And you get
Yeah,
to.
I love that I get to be a working manager and keep my hands still in it day to day. It keeps the relationship stronger and keeps my skills up, honestly.
That's awesome. What do we know about fundraising? We hear a lot about staff turnover. A lot has to happen in a timely fashion from the time the major gift officer gives notice to the time that you hire on a new one. And sometimes there's quite a gap there. Do you have any example you can share when a new gift officer came on board and had success pretty quickly?
Oh, yes. There are so many factors that can play into this, but I think the last two organizations I worked for both handled gift officer transitions really well. At each of those organizations, we had a checklist of all the things that the prospect development team and development operations had to do around offboarding and onboarding staff. When a new person started, our prospect development team would get 30 minutes on the calendar within the first few days just to build rapport and learn a bit more about that gift officer and how they worked and what they were used to from research, and to make sure they just had that open door for the new gift officer to be able to reach out. We'd also leave them with just, a quick report or two to look through of what the portfolio looked like. Then we'd schedule a longer time with them in their first week or earlier in their second week, like 60 to 90 minutes. And our prospect development team would sit down with that gift officer and go name by name through the portfolio the fundraiser would be taking on. So we'd talk through research notes and what strategy the former staff were trying and any open opportunities or upcoming actions, and would really try to highlight what a good first outreach step might be for that new staffer. Because I think we've all been new at organizations before, and it can be so overwhelming to get to know everybody and learn all the processes and learn the database, but Our major gifts colleagues always are more successful when they feel comfortable asking questions or seeking help, when they know what they need to do to get started, and when all the tools are in place. Nothing is worse than starting a job and feeling like the organization isn't ready for you. Like you don't have a login to the database and nobody's thought about who should be in the portfolio yet. And you just kind of flounder while you're trying to sort it all out and learn the org. And my goal is to avoid that at all costs and try to set the person up with like, here are your first few successes and some easy wins.
Well, that's really nice because it takes a while just to understand the fundraising priorities. Like, what programs are we really offering? Who are those people? How does that funding work? What are we looking for? What size gifts? And then the personalities.
Yep.
That's a lot of knowledge to accumulate in a short period of time.
Exactly. So I think the more you can give quick wins, these are 5 people that I think you should try to get coffee with soon. Here's somebody that just made a gift and needs stewardship. Call and thank them and ask why they care about it. Here are 5 or 10 things that you can be doing in this first week before you really know what's going on, before you know all the details that'll get you started.
So, what about the back end of that example you gave me? So, I'm a new major gift officer. I come in, you've given me some details, you've walked through all the different names. How do I feel comfortable that I'm making progress? Like, will I know what report to look at? How many calls did I make? How many, whatever I'm measuring?
I think, as I said, there's a lot of different components to this. And I think the database training and just knowing what are all the tools and resources you have, what should I be accessing when, and how do I interpret those is really helpful. So I try to establish a relationship where I've just got such an open door that I tell people the first couple times you're putting an action in the database, we'll do the training, we'll walk through it. First couple times you're doing it, just call me and I'll hop on Teams with you and I'll screen share and we can do it together and I'll watch, or I try to catch things really early on. So if we've got a new staffer, I'm paying really close attention to their solicitations, to their activity, to their portfolio, and just trying to catch, oh, you forgot to put this code over here. We need to do this going forward. Let me send you a little tutorial or a video on how to track these so that they know kind of what's feeding into everything else.
Is there like a monthly meeting where the major gift officers come together so that new person can hear what other people are doing?
Yeah, our major gifts team here meets together once a week, and then they bring in guest speakers. And as the overseer of prospect management, I am a frequent guest speaker or sit in on those meetings just to hear what some of the concerns are. So they can kind of talk through what's been a challenge, what are strategy ideas, what do other people know about these prospects they're inheriting, that I think really helps hit the ground running and create a village. Nobody can fundraise alone. You need your support and your people around you to help learn those priorities and figure out the strategy and brainstorm ideas. And we try to develop that really early here so people feel comfortable asking for help.
Has there ever been a time where a gift officer came on and in the first 3 months was able to keep a live opportunity hot and close it?
Yeah, I've seen that a handful of times. I've also seen it fail spectacularly at some organizations. I think it really depends on how their prospects are handled in that interim period. So, like this summer, we lost a fantastic gift officer here, and it highlighted just how game changing it can be to have that good offboarding plan in place and to know what is the plan and what is the strategy, both in the interim period and once a new hire starts. And if you can manage really well in that interim period, so much easier for a new person to kind of hit the ground running, get a quick introduction, get up to speed with what's been happening with this prospect, what conversations have occurred, but also to build their own relationship that they can grow and flourish. The relationship should be with the organization as a whole, not just an individual fundraiser, but you need both of those components in place to be successful.
So, what is an example of that interim period where the prospect feels good enough that when someone else picks up the ball, they're ready to keep going?
I think it's just knowing contact people and having strong touch points. So whenever somebody leaves our organization, I sit down with the fundraiser and their manager, and we go through each prospect in the portfolio one by one. It can take so much time to do this, but it is so worth it. So we take notes, we talk about the strategy, we talk about some next steps, and we talk about who's going to manage in the interim and permanently, and we log all of that data in our database and have it ready to go when a new person comes on board. But during that interim period, we also really try to tee up a few actions. So we review who needs to be notified of that gift officer's departure, what upcoming events are happening, or what informational pieces are going to get published that might be a good touch point, and who out of this portfolio should be getting the impact report, a holiday card, an invite to this house party. We figure out who needs a solicitation teed up in that interim and who might be better waiting until they've got a new permanent fundraiser in place, kind of when those should happen and how much they should occur for. And we decide who needs touch points from organizational leadership or our project staff and outline who on our team is in charge of teeing up those actions and just making sure they're happening and getting logged. It can be hard to step in and manage a relationship just for those few months between permanent staff, especially if there's a major solicitation at play or if there's complex stewardship that's needed. But I think having a really clear plan for like who's on point for each action and having a few activities like ready to go and teed up and in the queue really helps keep prospects feeling engaged with your organization and keeps them from languishing or lapsing in that in-between time.
Wow, that's really powerful. I'm hearing the database throughout, even though you're not saying it. If those actions are thought through, like they can be in there so that no one
Yep.
has to forget, so that you can help usher and make sure that it actually happens among the flurry of activity that is always happening.
Exactly. Because if you're managing your own full portfolio plus 5 people that were your colleagues, prospects, you need to keep all of that organized somewhere and you need to know who's where and are they there temporarily or permanently. Like your database is the perfect place to track all of this. And then when your new staffer comes on board, all the data's there already. It's easy to run reports and pull down activity, contact reports to figure out the background on each of these prospects.
So there's a lot of work that happens for that from everyone.
Yes. It does take a village.
And if you weren't in your position, if there was no one to serve in that position, then that would fall on the shoulders of the leaving major gift officer and the supervisor almost exclusively. That would be just a whole lot of extra work.
Exactly. The departing staffer is trying to wrap up relationships and transition all of these things, and the manager is trying to hire. They need to get job descriptions and be interviewing. Those should be their focus, not the minutia of how to track all of these things. So there's a real partnership involved there.
And the dollars are there. If the
Exactly.
relationships are kept alive, gifts can come in during the interim, but they can also come in pretty quickly after.
Exactly. And every fundraiser has their own style too. And so we've seen some fundraisers who do very different types of outreach than prior staff that are suddenly very successful with certain donors that we've had trouble getting to. And so sometimes it just takes getting the right people together too.
Well, before I let you go, I'm wondering if you have a hot tip or a resource that you recommend for major gift officers and research and prospect management professionals that support those major gift officers.
I think my hot tip is just to touch base with each other often, even if it's just about little things, but keeping those relationships between your prospect development or your database folks and your frontline fundraisers is so crucial. Both of these worlds have very different skill sets. And so the most successful gift officers I've seen are really good at tapping into their prospect development colleagues' skills and strengths. And the best prospect development professionals I've seen are really good at tapping into their fundraisers' skills and strengths. And so if you're sitting around wondering if your research is helpful or if it got used, pick up the phone and call and ask, and you're probably going to get really helpful insight into what's working and what could be better. And major gift officers can spend so much time Googling prospects or trying to access an article behind a paywall that, your prospect researcher or your prospect development person might be able to answer your weird, quirky database question or get that article for you or answer that question that you just spent half an hour wasting time Googling. And the more you can keep those lines of communication really open and flexible and touch base with each other, it's better for everybody. Use each other's skills.
Fabulous advice. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been really fun to be here. Thanks for having me, Jen.
That was Janna Lee, Senior Director of Development Operations at the National Parks Conservation Association. And holy work ethic, Batman! Were you impressed with how thorough Janna is with her prospect management efforts? I was. If you want smooth transitions of any kind, but donor and staff transitions to be sure, there is no way to cut corners. Good relationships require attention, and they get that attention from Janna.